My father's 74, retired hedge fund manager worth approximately $40 million. My brother, Anne-Marie, 46, managing partner at a venture capital firm married to money, lives in Greenwich. My sister Candace, 43, pharmaceutical sales executive, designer wardrobe, McMansion in the suburbs. And me, Nikki Zucker, 45, Rear Admiral Lower, half in the United States Navy, commanding a carrier strike group. Living in base housing that my family thinks is assigned dormitories for career military. That's the lineup. In their eyes, I'm the outlier, the disappointment, the one who took all that opportunity and somehow squandered it. They're convinced I settled, that I aimed low. That joining the military was the fallback choice for people who couldn't cut it in the real world. They're sure I need oversight, advice, financial babysitting, protection from myself most of all. What they don't know is that for 2 decades I've been quietly stacking assets. Military pay, combat bonuses, tax advantages, and very deliberate investments in defense contractors and real estate. 20 years of discipline. My net worth sits around $11 million. They don't have the faintest clue. Today's gathering at my father's house was to go over the family trust fund distributions. On paper, a routine meeting. In reality, a performance. I had a feeling it would be entertaining. I merged onto the highway, driving toward the house where we'd grown up, a colonial tucked into a wealthy Connecticut suburb, old money territory, subtle affluence. Nothing flashy, everything intentional, the kind of neighborhood where success murmurs instead of announces itself. Growing up, my uniform had always felt out of place there, like a prop. Like I was pretending to belong to a life that wasn't really mine. My phone buzzed, a message from Candace. Don't be late, this is important, as though I didn't understand importance. As though I hadn't spent my adult life being excluded from anything the family deemed important. As if this meeting would somehow break a pattern 20 years in the making. I'd joined the Navy at 23, straight out of college, to my family's deep and lasting disappointment. Dad had expected an MBA, a seamless transition into his fund, an education in what he called real money. My brother had wanted me to cultivate relationships, exploit Dad's network, learn that achievement was about proximity, not effort. Candace had just been baffled. Why choose a government paycheck when the private sector existed? I'd tried explaining service, meaning, leadership, responsibility that couldn't be reduced to quarterly returns. They'd smiled, nodded, and then spent the next 2 decades treating my decision like a youthful error I refused to acknowledge. The trust fund was Dad's legacy project. He talked about it endlessly, taking care of his children while he was still alive, passing on his wisdom, structuring wealth the right way. My siblings had been looped into every conversation. I meanwhile received a formal email informing me my attendance was requested at 2:00 p.m. I arrived at 1:55. Anne-Marie's Tesla was already parked front and center. Candace's Range Rover sat beside it. I left my 7-year-old Honda on the street. No reason to occupy premium real estate. Inside, the house carried the familiar blend of expensive coffee and my father's cologne. Voices drifted from his office, the command center, the room where fortunes had been made, where my brother had been groomed, where proteges had been mentored. A room I'd never been invited into as a student. They were gathered around Dad's desk, not the conference table, his chair, his territory. Dad sat behind the desk, my brother leaned casually against a bookshelf, my sister balanced on the arm of a chair. Across from Dad sat Leonard Garr, his attorney of 3 decades. Nikki, Dad boomed when he saw me, his tone overly cheerful, rehearsed. Right on time, good, let's begin. I acknowledged them and stayed near the door. No one offered me a seat. Leonard opened a folder. As you know, your father has been restructuring his estate to ensure long-term support for each of you while preserving principal for future generations. Individual trusts have been created based on personal circumstances. Anne-Marie looked relaxed, almost bored. He already knew the numbers. Anne-Marie, Leonard continued, your trust is funded at $3 million, quarterly distributions of $10,000 adjusted for inflation. Anne-Marie nodded, unsurprised. Candace, same structure. $3 million principal, $10,000 quarterly. She beamed. Thank you, Daddy. Then Leonard slid a loan sheet of paper toward me. Nikki, your father felt a different structure was appropriate given your situation. Your trust is funded at $500,000 with annual distributions of $1,000 annual. Not quarterly, annual, and, Leonard added carefully, distributions require trustee approval. Your brother will serve in that role and assess your financial needs each year. I looked up. Anne-Marie was smiling, that old childhood grin, the one that meant he'd won. Can't have you burning through it, he said lightly. Dad nodded, pleased. We just want to look out for you, Nikki. You've never handled real money. The military takes care of you, but wealth is different. Anne-Marie has the expertise. They waited for outrage, for protest, for confirmation of their assumptions. What they didn't see was 23 years of command experience, budgets in the tens of millions, operations costing more per day than they'd ever personally managed. Negotiations with foreign militaries, congressional testimony, 2 graduate degrees, and here I was needing permission for $1,000. I understand, I said evenly. Leonard shifted uncomfortably. There is an emergency provision, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, Candace said, standing, probably the landscaper. Silence followed. I reread the document. 500,000 versus their 3 million. 1,000 a year versus their 40. Supervision versus autonomy. The message was unmistakable. Candace returned, puzzled. Nikki. There's someone here for you, says he needs a signature. I'm not expecting anything. He's asking for Admiral Zucker. The room froze. At the door stood a courier holding a large envelope marked with a logo I recognized instantly, my investment firm S. Admiral Zucker, quarterly dividend check. Signature required. My family crowded behind me as I signed and accepted the envelope. Dividend? Dad asked. From what? I opened it. The number spoke for itself. $2,400,000. Anne-Marie's smile vanished. Quarterly dividend, I said calmly. Defense equities, Lockheed Raytheon General Dynamics, bought early. Held patiently. That's impossible, Anne-Marie said, reaching for the check. Don't. It's real, I continued. Doesn't include property income, retirement accounts, or bonds. Dad looked stunned. You have millions, about 11, maybe 12. I slid the check away. So the trust, thank you, but no. You let us believe, Candace started. I let you assume, I corrected. You decided that military service meant failure, that government salary meant inadequacy, that my life was somehow less than yours because I chose service over profit. We were trying to help. Dad said, were you? Or were you trying to feel superior to maintain some hierarchy, where you got to be the wise patriarch dispensing resources to his less capable children? That's not fair, Nikki. Fair. I looked at Leonard. Is it fair that my trust is 16th the size of my siblings, that I need permission to access it, that you structured it like I'm a child who can't be trusted with money? My father felt I was incompetent, because I wouldn't discuss my finances with him, because I didn't ask for advice. Because I built my life and my wealth independently instead of playing into the family dynamic where everyone comes to Dad for guidance. Anne-Marie found his voice. You could have told us. Why? So you could do what? Offer me advice on investment strategies. Explain wealth management to someone who's been building a portfolio for 2 decades. No thanks. I learned everything I needed to know by watching Dad make the same mistake over and over. What mistake? Dad's voice was sharp. Assuming that people who don't ask for your help need it. Assuming that different choices are wrong choices. Assuming that your way is the only way to build wealth and success. I looked at each of them in turn. You know what? I've been standing here feeling righteous and angry about how you underestimated me, but I did the same thing to you. They blinked at me. I assumed you were shallow, that you cared only about money and status, that you couldn't possibly understand what I do or why it matters. I hid my success because I didn't trust you to value it. I judged you for judging me, and that makes me just as guilty. The silence was heavy now, thick with years of assumptions on both sides. I'm a rear admiral, I said quietly. Lower half, which means 1 star. I command a carrier strike group. 5,000 sailors, 6 ships, 70 aircraft. I'm responsible for maritime security operations across 2 oceans. I briefed the Joint Chiefs. I coordinate with allied navies. I make decisions that affect international relations. And I've been terrified to tell you any of this because I assumed you'd find a way to dismiss it to make it smaller than it is. We wouldn't have. Candace stopped. Okay, we might have. You would have, I said, because that's been the pattern. I don't fit into your understanding of success, so I must be failing. And I accepted that pattern instead of challenging it, because it was easier to be angry than to be vulnerable. Dad sat down heavily in his desk chair. $11 million, approximately, from military pay and smart investing and living below my means, and not needing to signal wealth through cars and houses. I gestured at the office, at the expensive furniture and the framed photos with powerful people. This Marie was staring at the envelope in my hands. That check, that's more than my annual income. It's 1/4 dividend. I get 4 per year. You make more than I do. Probably, but that's not the point. The point is that we've all been making assumptions about each other based on surface appearances. You assumed I was struggling because I drive an old car and live in base housing. I assumed you were vapid because you care about designer brands and luxury vacations. We're all wrong. Leonard cleared his throat, so the trust arrangement. I'll sign whatever paperwork declines my portion, split my share between Anne-Marie and Candace. They can have it. Nikki, that's not necessary. Dad said it as though because accepting that trust means accepting the premise behind it that I need your protection, your oversight, your approval to manage money. And I don't. I never did. But neither did you need me to be poor to feel generous. We've been playing roles for each other instead of being honest. My sister spoke up, her voice small. I thought you were happy in the Navy. I thought you liked the simplicity of not worrying about money. I am happy, but not because I don't worry about money, because I built something that matters to me. Because I command ships and lead people and do work that has purpose beyond profit. That's real to me, just like your work is real to you. But you let us patronize you, Anna Marie said, for years. All the advice we gave, the concern, I know, and I let it happen because fighting it meant revealing that I'd succeeded on different terms than the ones you valued. Which meant admitting I cared what you thought, which I did. I do. I looked at Dad. I wanted you to be proud of me, not proud of my bank balance, but proud of what I'd accomplished. And when you weren't, when you kept treating me like I'd failed, I decided to protect myself by hiding how well I'd actually done. I am proud, Dad said, his voice cracked slightly. I just didn't understand. A rear admiral, you command a carrier group. Yes, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask? I countered. In 23 years, you never once asked what rank I held, what my responsibilities were, what my day-to-day work involved. You decided I was in logistics or admin or some vague support role because that fit your understanding of what someone who wouldn't discuss their work must be doing. He had no answer for that. But I continued softer now. I also never volunteered the information because I was afraid you'd find a way to diminish it. Afraid you'd explain how a real career in finance would have been better. So I hid, and hiding meant you couldn't see me, which meant you filled in the blanks with your own assumptions. Candy sat down on the couch. This is so messed up. Yes, I agreed, but it's our mess and we all contributed to it. Leonard stood. I'm going to give you all some privacy. John, let me know about the trust arrangements. He left quickly, grateful to escape the family drama. We stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Andrew spoke. I'm sorry for the smirk, for the comment about blowing the money, for all of it. I'm sorry too, Candace added. For assuming you needed help, for treating you like you were less successful because your success looked different. I nodded. And I'm sorry for judging you, for assuming you were shallow, for hiding instead of trusting you with the truth. Dad looked at the trust documents on his desk. These are wrong, all of them. Not just yours, all of them. I've been trying to control you through money, trying to keep you tied to me through distributions and oversight. It's not about protecting you. It's about, he stopped, struggling, about still mattering to you. Dad, I said gently, you matter to us because you're our father, not because you have money, not because you give us guidance, just because you're you. But I wanted to be useful. You are useful, just not in the way you thought. We don't need you to manage our money. We need you to be our father, to ask us about our lives, to be interested in us, not in fixing us. He nodded slowly, then looked at me. Tell me about commanding a carrier group, and I did. For the next 3 hours sitting in that office, I told him about the work I'd never discussed, about command responsibility in maritime operations, and the weight of decisions that affected thousands of lives, about briefing admirals and coordinating with allied navies, and the satisfaction of doing something larger than myself. My siblings listened too, asking questions, genuinely trying to understand, and I asked them about their work. Really asked not just polite questions, but genuine curiosity about what drove them, what they found meaningful, what challenges they faced. We ordered pizza for dinner, not fancy catering, just pizza from the place we'd gone to as kids. We ate in the kitchen, and for the first time in 20 years, we talked like people who actually wanted to know each other. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation where everything was suddenly fixed, but it was honest. and honesty, after years of assumptions and performance and protective hiding, felt like fresh air. As I drove home that night, the dividend check sat in my bag, evidence of a secret I no longer needed to keep. My phone buzzed with texts from my siblings. Awkward but genuine attempts to maintain the connection we'd started rebuilding. Anne-Marie, so about that trust arrangement. Want to help me invest instead of the other way around? Candace. Dinner next month. I want to hear more about your work. Real questions, I promise. Dad, I looked up what a rear admiral does. I'm proud of you. Should have said that 20 years ago. I didn't respond right away. Just drove through the Connecticut suburbs where wealth whispered and status mattered and success had always been measured in zeros on a bank statement. I'd spent 2 decades hiding my success because I didn't trust my family to value it. They'd spent the same time underestimating me because they couldn't understand it. We'd all been wrong. We'd all been right. We'd all been trapped in patterns of our own making. The revelation hadn't fixed everything, but it had broken the pattern. And sometimes breaking the pattern is enough. Sometimes